Hi, it's Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Dee, how are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So recently we did several videos that had great success. We did one on fairies, we did one on sharks, and we did one on Merlin and King Arthur. So we had some follow-up questions. So I thought we would spend this video time and just go through the list of questions that I've got. And of course, you can expand on it as much as you need to and explain anything further that we don't, know that we need to know. Okay. All right. So
Okay, sounds like a plan.
let's start with fairies. Are there human-sized fairies or elves like we saw in Lord of the Rings?
They have the essence of fairy, but usually a fairy is a smaller being.
Okay.
So I mean, we could be a humanoid that was once a fairy in a past life. Um, but for the most part, we are not going to see a humanoid fairy.
Okay.
That makes
All right.
sense.
Now, we're already going off road on this one. So Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings and it was quite detailed and they did a really good job at depicting it in the movies.
Mhm.
Was that maybe like a semi-historical kind of a book, or was it just all made up in his head fantasy or whatever?
There are a lot of events in the movies and the books that are related to what has actually happened. Um, because what we always think, it's just humans. It's just humans that have been fighting, doing all this stuff. But there were wars. So some of it is actual events that are portrayed throughout these events. And then they just labeled them as fantasy. So the the information's out there for us, but for the most part nobody really thinks it's real because they think people are crazy.
Right,
Because they've put this idea of fantasy as this made up concept.
right. So like, all right, let's pick this apart. Hobbits, were they real? And when I say real, I mean on Earth, okay? So
Hobbits are, I mean, there's still hobbits around. We just have a mix now. So we wouldn't really consider them hobbits. But th there are beings that are mixed from these previous, let's say, creatures, if you want to call them.
cool. Okay. How about Ents, the walking, talking trees?
Oh, yeah, there's still walking trees.
Yeah, we've seen video. In fact, on my
Mhm.
website, I have some video of trees that are moving. So
Yeah,
cool.
now we've changed. There are still walking trees.
Yeah,
They've more stabilized because the environment has been changed. You know, how we portray them has changed, how we work with that. And so a lot of things have changed so that they're not as lively as we see in these movies. But there are, energies, entities within the trees. They have beings. Just not all of them are capable of moving at this point in time.
interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
So that is we could do a whole video on that particular, topic, that movie, but
Yeah.
it's so interesting, isn't it? So
It is.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, most of these, like I said, we think of them as, fiction or fantasy, but really there's a lot of interesting things that draw us in. And usually we're drawn to more of this mythological or fairy tale type movies because we know that there's some sort of truth within them. I know for me personally, I like to watch these types of movies more than, these real life action things,
Right, me too.
because it's very interesting.
Yeah. I love science fiction and fantasy books or movies, partially because some of it, a lot of it is true or based on truth, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
interesting. All right. Now we've got a whole separate topic called the blue fairies. Um, so blue fairies, did they originate on Earth or are they on other planets?
Other planets.
Okay.
So we call them blue fairies because they have this fairy-like energy, but they do not originate from here. They are alien.
Okay. And are there blue fairies here on Earth right now, of course, right?
Of course, yeah.
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 And they have magical powers. We're gonna call it magic, but they have supernatural powers is a better way to say it.
Yes, they do.
All right.
Yeah. And okay, so then this goes back into our other conversation about fairies. Because these fairies are technically alien, they can be more humanoid forms.
All right.
So when we talked about that, let's rewind 5 minutes when I said, oh no, they're small. Well, those ones are the ones here based on Earth, the ones that have derived from Earth, the ones that are here helping the planet, specific reasons. These blue fairies that are more, let's say, alien-like, they do come here, but they're not structured per se to be these small entities. So they can be more humanoid. You will notice a difference between the people and these. They technically are aliens. We call them blue fairies, but they are aliens.
Okay.
Um, that's just, what they're here for. They're here to help also. They just have more of a gift within people too, meaning that they're here to help the planet, but they're also here to help and serve people, whereas fairies are more based off of helping the earth itself.
Okay. So, are they able to, let's call it shape shift? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, yeah. Um, they can shapeshift. It's interesting because I just did a reading for a blue fairy the other time, and during the video, you could actually see the switch within them, and they were saying like people have noticed that they're not from this planet, and I like you could see it happening within the camera itself.
Yeah.
So yes, we do have this way of them protecting themselves so they can fit in. But you'll notice key subtle details that are different. Usually they look more unique. Like there's some sort of characteristic that doesn't represent human, but it's like they still kind of fit in. So it's kind of like on that teeter-totter line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I know that I know people that are like, we'll call them human, okay?
Mhm.
But they have been blue fairies in the past.
Yes.
So how can that occur? Like, did they come to Earth and just stay, or what happened?
Well, there's a lot that can happen.
Yeah.
So some of it could be based off of, they wanted to help Earth and they got kicked out. A lot of people or a lot of species don't want to help Earth because, well, there's actually multiple reasons, but one of the major reasons is because this is more of, let's say, battlegrounds. So the game has been going on for so long. When these planets tend to disrupt Earth and try to get us out of the game, they kind of bring their whole planet into a war that they don't really want. So a lot of planets don't want to get in that battle. So they try to stay out of it as much as possible. So when you have, aliens from any type of planets that are coming here to help, usually they're going to be kind of cut off. So when they come here, they're kind of stuck here until mission's accomplished.
Okay. So what you're saying is the blue fairies and all those other ETs that have come here are
Mhm.
usually ostracized by their people because they don't want their planet to be sucked into our war.
Yes.
Of course,
And right now we're getting close to this end point, this end game. So you're going to notice that more of these entities from any species are going to be coming in a little bit more to help because they realize like most of them do know it's wrong, but the risk was greater than the reward.
right, right.
So now they're seeing that it's pretty much an even playing field. And we're actually turning the tides and we're close towards the end. So
Woo! Yeah,
it's going to increase those that really wanted to help because they're like, well, they're almost there. They just need a little push. Let's get them over. And then, I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like they want it and everything's going to be back to normal,
yeah,
or not normal, but better.
yeah.
So you're going to see an influx in different types of species.
That is so exciting. And I've already like kind of known that, but it's really good to have that confirmation. So, can these blue fairies be human sized or are they smaller like our regular fairies?
Well, they can be human sized because they're not specific to this planet. Um, they're coming in from another. They are going to be more human-like, um, because that's their sizing from their planet. So it's normal,
Okay, cool.
like our size.
Um, you told me years ago that you were a blue fairy and you were
Hmm.
basically like a princess on their planet. And
Yes.
you were ostracized because you came in to help Earth. You gave it all up and you've been here a
Yes.
really long time. So
Mhm.
there's others from your planet that did the same thing.
Yeah, there are others, and there's going to be more coming through. But yes, that lifetime has been a while for
Yeah.
my blue fairy self.
Okay. And
So for those that don't understand, we have more than one type of energy. So my blue fairy self is my original form, but we can have as we progress throughout this lifetime, we intermingle and mix with different I don't want to say species, but we are not just one specific being. It's not going to be one the whole way through our lifespan. We progress, we change, we develop, and as you become more understanding of everything, it's very complex.
yeah,
Our atoms have actually manipulated to become this new being within multiple dimensions. So we're not just one. We're not just human. We're not just, fairy. We're not just whatever you originated in. You do have multiple sources within yourself.
super cool. So you can
Mhm.
have fairy, you can have I can angel, you can have this, you can have that.
Mhm.
I'm just picking stuff at
Yeah.
random. Okay.
Yeah. So we're not just this one.
Right.
And I think as humans, we have this hard understanding of getting out of just, this is you. You're just human, that's it.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
this hard concept of there is more to us. We can be multiple beings. We just can't fully comprehend
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's hard because we're thinking that this is what we are. This is our material world. This is
Mhm.
what we are. We don't realize that we're so much broader and there's so much more
Yeah,
to us. Yeah.
exactly.
We'll be realizing that pretty soon, I think, in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are starting to realize that they're questioning their authentic self. They're like, I've been interested in this, but people have kind of like off put it. So, society does that to us also. They're like,
Right.
oh, you're not correct, or this, and this. And we second guess ourselves so much that we ostracize ourselves from our original being.
Yeah. And I think our society is set up that way, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You have to fit into this little box and do it a certain way, or your
Mhm.
peers will keep you in line, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It's the whole thing. All right. Anything else we need to know about blue fairies? Oh, I know. Do they have wings?
No,
They don't. I
they don't need wings. They can fly. They don't need wings.
when you told me about the blue fairy thing a few years ago, I actually thought it was like a being of light, like an orb or whatever.
Okay, so the interesting about blue fairies is we can actually shift. So you have your original humanoid form. So if let's say you're looking at me and I was in my original blue fairy formation, I would be just um, a human shape of bright blue. Like you wouldn't really see. all these details. I wouldn't have hair. I wouldn't have all these extra, things that
Yep.
aren't needed. I mean, I can shapeshift a little bit and be whatever I need to be, but the base form is going to be a pure blue light in a humanoid looking shape.
Cool.
But
Cool.
we can then transform into a smaller fairy-like shape. There is no, fairy being. We are just like an orb of blue light. So it's kind of like it's a good reference. That little thing that goes over like the Disney logo where it's like this little ball of like dust. It's kind of the same thing, just there is no form of a fairy. It's just a blue orb flying.
Okay, I
Does that
think
make sense?
it's Tinkerbell on that thing, but sometimes
Yeah.
they change it according to the movie.
I'm just trying to think like what a good
Yeah,
shape of it. It's a ball of it's an orb of
yeah,
light that it
yeah.
can move around, is free flying. There's just no specific fairy-like shape.
Cool. Well, and in the Wizard of Oz, they've got the blue fairy coming down, right? And
Hmm.
I mean, I wonder if the creators of the Wizard of Oz knew. Pretty
Oh
sure they
yeah,
did. Yeah,
yeah. I mean they knew a lot. They just have a way to make people think that,
it's
it's all
fantasy.
fun and games.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, anything else we need to know about blue fairies?
I don't think so. I mean, if people have questions.
All right. Well, I thought if we just bundle all the questions in one video, it would be,
Of course.
we can burn right through them. Okay,
Yeah.
next topic is the shark video that we did. So
Okay.
if you haven't watched these other videos, watch them first and then come to the Q&A because that will fill it in more for you. But
Mhm.
you said that the Olympians had control of the Kraken. Is that what I heard from you?
Yes.
All right. So they were making the Kraken like terrorize the population, the sailing ships, whatever. And
Mhm.
and how did it break the control when they left the planet?
Um, so for the Kraken, most of it is accurate with, they use the Kraken to instill fear within the people. So
Yeah.
that way they would keep getting the prayers, keep getting the vibrational patterns, keep uplifting them, giving them the power.
Yeah.
So at that certain point too was kind of their gods in general, their downfall because people were suffering. And when people suffer, they're like, why am I doing this? They
Yeah.
start to question their motives, and it's like you're praying to an entity that's not really helping you. Why not just give myself the power? And that was the point they were at. So they stopped their prayer, they stopped giving the energy. And at that point, that's when their downfall came because their energy wasn't as powerful as before. So they didn't really have full control of a true being. They were slipping. And so as people started to get angry and angrier, they really did lose control. And then that's when the tides turned. So at that moment, that's when the Kraken really had control back. And that's when they kind of set up the barrier. So these beings like the Kraken, the Megalodon, they do have not like supernatural powers for our world. So remember I was talking about that barrier?
Mhm.
They set up this barrier for protection of self because they were just misused.
Right.
They were misused, misguided, manipulated to do dark negative things. So protecting themselves is what they did.
Okay. You just said something really interesting that it didn't dawn on me until now, but basically the gods needed and wanted the people's like they wanted to be worshipped. They wanted that energy, like you said.
Yeah.
And so by protecting the people from this bad Kraken, that's how they got it. So it was done
Mhm.
in a very dark and manipulative way. um,
Yeah.
yeah, which it might work in the short term, but that never works long term.
No, it doesn't because there's a point where people are done
Yeah.
and people come to that realization of why.
Yeah.
And that's really the key moment was, why are we praying to these beings that we're still suffering?
Right.
We're still going through all this stuff that we've been doing, and we've
Right.
been giving them all this energy, and where are we?
Yeah.
And that's, if you look in history, that's how it's been. One God's here, one God there, and it keeps shifting, who they're praying to. But at the end of the day, are are they really being helped? And that's why, like, when we talk about like religion and stuff, I'm not for that, because the religion has forced people to think that they have to pray upon this higher being that might be using them. We don't really know. But if they're not truly helping the people, why are you giving them your energy?
Right.
Why not use that energy and really transform your own life? We actually have gifts, we have powers. What if you're a god yourself, And giving it to somebody else, you're just wasting away. And then you don't have that internal belief within yourself. So yeah, there's a lot that has repeated throughout history based
Right.
upon using this fear within people to cause this prayer, to cause this higher vibrational pattern to this being.
Right.
And they're not always being authentic. So these people are still doing the same thing over and over because they want help. They want somebody to make it better for them. They want a better life.
Right.
They're just looking at it in the wrong way.
Right. And the people, of course, they don't know any better. Just like in
Mhm.
Egypt, we have the gods with the animal heads or whatever. They were ETs as well, and they came down and did the same thing. They wanted the power of the people or the whatever, and they were corrupt. And over time, I mean, it took probably a long time.
Yeah.
They're no longer here that I'm aware of, and that could be another video topic, right? Man, we're going to be really busy with these topics. But yeah, yeah. Um, did Medusa kill the Kraken? Is that story real?
That story is real. Now, Medusa herself, well, actually, no, the story isn't real.
It isn't real.
Parts of it are blah, 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 pits of it, parts of it are real. Um, Medusa, it's a really hard one. The Kraken is still around. Medusa didn't necessarily kill the Kraken. It was more just helping it escape,
Oh,
because Medusa understood that the Kraken was being misused and misguided, just like she was. So there's this horrible negative idea of Medusa just, turning people to stone. But when you look at her story, it's actually very sad. And some of it's, a little off, but for the most part, she was used and abused. And at some point, she wanted to take back control. And so she was doing what she could to help beings and people as much as she could. So we talk about these statues. People were lured there, lured. Oh my gosh, I can't say the
Lord, Lord.
word. They were brought there. Let's say that. And those people had dark hearts, like negative, horrible people.
The ones that became the statues?
Yes.
Okay.
So it wasn't just anybody that's turning into statue in stone. It's ones that had ill intentions.
Ah, how interesting.
Yeah.
Now, are those statues still like there? Are those people like gone or what happened?
After a certain point, they did kind of dissipate. There's still, afterwards, they had their souls had a choice. It's either you progress and you become a better being, or you stay entrapped and you kind of are just stuck. They're not here, they're not on a planet or anything. They're just kind of in this, let's say, alternate dimension.
Wow, how interesting is that? So in our minds, we've always thought of Medusa as this horrible, horrible, like killer and all that, but she was basically picking off the bad guys.
Yeah.
All right. And so she, if I remember the myth, she, there was like a fight over a guy.
It was another god. So
Yeah.
long story short, she was raped. But she went to Athena for help because goddess of love, like, hey, let's get some help. But Athena had a thing for the person that harmed her. And so instead of helping her, she put a spell on her, turning her into stone.
Or
Well, not
having
turning,
the
but yeah,
snakes. Yeah,
the snakes and then turning people to stone. So she was, like I said before, used and abused and forced within this horror. It was like a curse from the gods. And nobody helped her. And that's when she was sick of it. I mean, I couldn't imagine going through that type of pain and then wanting help from somebody, and they, instead of helping you, turn you into what a lot of people considered a monster.
horrible.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, because that is insane. I would never have thought of that twist of the story, you know?
Yeah, if you look into Medusa and her true origin, I mean there's more dark stuff that happened, but that's like the gist.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Was the golden fleece real?
Yes, it was.
And what kind of a creature did that come from?
It, so what they're saying is it was more created. So it's a mixture of a being and magic. So it's not just one source. So it had to be, they don't want to say the specific name because it can cause issues.
Fine.
Um, but they're saying the being that it came from had this universal energy coursing through it, but using the right type of magic could really enhance it. So that's how it was created. So it was kind of like they intertwined magic within the spule. What are they called? Oh my gosh. When it spindle it together. Um they
Weave?
they inter no, they didn't weave. It was before they weaved it together.
Spool.
It's like they spun it
Yeah.
to make like the wool itself. They spun it into the yarn. I forget what that's called. I apologize. But they intermingled magic within every thread. So that way it could be used upon an easy touch versus, having to be on the being still. Because once the fur comes off the being, it kind of changes form.
How
Like
interesting
the like
is
the
that?
the magic isn't as potent or powerful. So by intermingling the magic, it changed the
Right.
thread.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, isn't it? We could do like so many, there's so many questions that are brewing, but I
Yeah,
wanted to get through our list first, of course. But
of course.
anything else we need to know about that without disclosing anything confidential?
Yeah, there's some things that they just kind of block out because they don't want um certain information out.
Yeah, I don't blame them. Okay.
Yeah.
Last series of questions is about our Merlin and King Arthur videos. So the
Okay.
day we were doing the video, like we just pop on and sometimes we don't have a topic, and especially Dean never knows a topic. So I
That's
was
the guy
told,
that we're doing.
yeah, yeah, just show up. So it was Merlin, which is so fascinating to me. And so we had quite a few questions there, but I wanted to say what I think I learned most about that was how these little like legends and all that are what you pointed out, pivotal points in history. Okay, because we were talking even about drops of water. You raise the vibration of one drop of water, you've raised the vibration of earth. You
Mhm.
raise the vibration of the people just a little bit, even if it was hundreds of years ago, the vibration of earth is raised, and the consciousness
Mhm.
of people is raised. So
Yeah.
That's what I got out of the story. How cool is that? So the key players in that story tried to do good, and
Yeah.
they didn't officially 100% succeed, but it was very interesting, and there's a
Mhm.
lot we don't know still.
Oh yeah.
So a big question is Morgaine and Morgana the same person? Because I was calling her Morgaine and you call her Morgana in the video.
Yeah.
Man.
They are the same person. So I guess it's, your preference on how you pronounce it. Morgaine, Morgana, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this is, a while ago, so names kind of switch, but it is the same person. And they still have the same energy. So no matter how you say it, you're kind of saying the same thing.
Okay, so same person, but very powerful being.
Yes.
And we had talked about how now she knew Merlin back then, right?
Yes. Yes.
They know who each other were.
Hmm.
Right. So we had talked a few years ago about how she had to bring the energy of all of Earth up at once. And I'm going to mess up what she tried to do. She had to flip the energy of Earth or something, which is a really big deal all at once, and it didn't work. Right.
Yeah,
And that's probably what led to her demise, right?
it did. So So I had a vision about this, and what happened was she was in that transformative state of bringing the change of polarization throughout the earth. So she's flipping the energy. The problem is she didn't have any help. Now, one thing is that I've heard legends and stories where people were there to help her and support her. She had this a whole bunch of negative people helping her because she was this dark being.
Yeah.
But she didn't have any help. She was by herself and she was doing everything she could to raise the vibration. So, um, and she's a very powerful being. So she could have done this correctly without being hurt during it, but because she had no supporters, it led to her demise. Um, During this, when you're in that type of state, you're not really conscious about what's happening in the plane around you. Your all your energy is going to the source and transforming it because it isn't just, a simple, you know, done. It's a huge shift. And at that point, she was using a lot of energy and she was focusing because it was a little bit different than what we're used to now with our energetic force fields and that kind of thing. So it was more of what we imagine, like chanting, that kind of thing, just because it was such a big shift. So while she was in this, that's when she was attacked, and that was her downfall. So it never got accomplished. So she did raise the vibration a little bit, but it wasn't to where it should have been.
Right. Okay. So one of the things this is the way I have it in my mind. She was like kind of like a little bit wild looking, and walking through town. And I'm almost seeing stepping stones, but she was more of a herbalist and a healer to the people. And she walked through town, but she looked so wild, people were maybe a little afraid of her. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one, didn't have full on luxury of what we have today. And then two, she was, let's say, like ostracized. So
Yeah.
even getting natural resources, I mean, bathing in the stream, I mean, people that do that, you don't really look normal afterwards. I mean, you might feel a little bit cleaner, but I mean, it's not like taking a hot, nice shower and doing your hair afterwards. So, yeah, and she didn't have people there like helping her and really supporting her. So, everything was on her time when she could fit it in. And at the end of the day, if you're by yourself, sometimes you don't really care what other people think of you. So she was at the point like, I'm getting through my day. I don't really care. Like, this is how I'm going to look.
Frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so it's just interesting stuff. So was
Mhm.
the Lady of the Lake a real character in this arena?
She was. It was still more of, I don't know if you want to call it mythical, but it was more of a being there as a protecting source.
So meaning not a human, basically.
Yeah.
And was she protecting the sword in this case?
Yes. Yeah. And she,
Before or after Arthur got it?
I'm getting before. She was there beforehand.
All
Mhm.
right. Is she the same being as Nimue?
No,
Ooh, interesting. Okay. And the sword itself, what material was that made out of?
not from this planet.
Ooh,
So let's say like a meteorite or a metal from a different planet.
was it black?
It was. And it had like we talked about earlier, like higher vibrational patterns had more effect with it because it's red energy versus some of the materials we use today, which are lacking of energy.
Ooh, okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. All right. Um, so wow. So she was not human, the Lady of the Lake.
Mhm.
The protector, though. Okay, I'm just kind of thinking, guys. So I'm sure we'll be getting more questions. We'll be doing this again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So is King Arthur still alive on Earth?
His soul is still moving around, but he is not the same. He's not the same person.
Right. He was killed in that lifetime.
Yes, he was.
Yep.
So, like I said, his soul's moving around. He still has that type of energy, but yeah, he was killed.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask the question, did he ever come to America? Because there's some sort of a castle on the East Coast that they say is King Arthur's. I don't know what this person's asking about, but
Hmm. Um, did he come to America? What I'm getting is no, he did not. But because King Arthur had this, I don't want to say high vibration, but people like respected him, they used his name to say it was his to get stuff that they wanted. So it was a misuse of name.
okay. Were
Mhm.
they dark, the ones that are misusing his name?
Yeah. I mean, what positive person's going to misuse somebody else's name?
Well, that's true. That's true.
So yeah, they used it to get sources, get things that they needed. Oh, King Arthur is going to be coming and living here. I mean, who wouldn't want to be like, oh, we'll help? Because
Yeah.
they heard the stories. I mean, it's one thing to be there, and then one thing to hear them because it always changes and becomes a little bit different. So they saw it as an opportunity to bring change.
Okay. Um, Question we received is, was or is Merlin Saint Germain?
No,
Okay. Um, can you tell us about Lancelot? What happened to him?
they're saying he was killed off.
Was he true to Arthur or was he a betrayer?
He was a betrayer. He was true for a while, but it looks like something happened to make him switch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all the questions that we received. Is there anything else
Okay.
we should know about that story? I mean, there's only a billion things to ask, but
I know that there's a lot that was going on. There's a lot in what we've heard. Um, I don't think so. It's
okay.
it's hard. If people have questions, the more questions the better, because I can,
Yeah.
easily get the information. Um, there's just a lot going on in that time period. Like I said, pivotal points in multiple forms.
Okay. Thank you for telling us. Hey, here's a question. Was Camelot a real castle? Like, was that a place that they built and, okay.
Yeah,
Is it still standing today perchance?
no,
Okay, dang it.
it's down.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for answering these
Of
questions.
course.
Really appreciate it. And we've got so much information just out of like, my brain is going, but we just don't have that kind of time right now. But I can see
Yeah.
tons and tons and tons more videos coming out about this stuff. So send over your questions, right?
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right. Thanks so much, Dee. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.